Welcome to Moon and Fire. I'm Emily Bailey, founder of Whole and Wild, where I guide women back to their sacred wisdom through ritual and cyclical living. This is a podcast for women ready to remember their sacred cycles, reclaim their radiant fire, and unleash their intuitive magic. Today, I'm delighted to be in conversation with Emily Race-Newmark, who brings profound wisdom about what she calls revillaging, the practice of returning to a village paradigm and creating the kind of community connection that we're truly meant for. What I find so compelling about Emily's work is how she approaches revillaging in a creative, relational, and spiritual practice that honors our cyclical nature rather than replicating the depleting patterns of the old paradigm. Emily's message that we're meant to live, age, raise children, and be part of a community, a village, and this isn't something of a faraway country or time, feels so timely for women who are feeling isolated and overwhelmed by trying to do everything themselves. Her work with the third space is also something I want to dig into, and her beautiful story about trusting her intuition to find their perfect home shows the magic that happens when we shift from doing to receiving. Emily, thank you so much for joining me in the sacred space today.
Oh, thanks for offering it and for who you are and for that intro. I loved hearing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to start by just having you share what revillaging means to you and what called you to this work of helping people return to a village paradigm.
Mm. So the name, I kind of was breaking it down to someone as village being this thing that we actually have around us right now, and we just need to kind of tap into that frequency and that like existence that's already here. And then the re part kind of has, this idea of reclaiming, remembering, and returning in some ways to the way we used to live, but
Mm,
also weaving that with the ways that we live now, the modernity that we do appreciate and value, the re kind of being a nod to like we are tapping into the past a bit, and kind of reclaiming and remembering. So we don't have to create this from nothing. Like we have a root system to
mm.
recall and even our own DNA in our own bodies. And yeah, and you asked how I got here, and I would say, like many of us, motherhood really kind of rocked me out of the individual paradigm because I was so dependent in the early postpartum period on others, but also seeing that like this child is dependent on me. And if you're still breastfeeding, as you mentioned, I am too, we are constantly reminded of the ways that we are not living this for ourselves right now. And so
Yeah.
yeah, that was really the initiation, I would say. But I also had a podcast. I still have a podcast called This Is How We Care. That, as I was living in my own initiation out of independence, I was interviewing all these visionaries for a vision of like, what kind of world are we wanting to create here? Feeling really overwhelmed by the status of these compounded crises, I would say. And they
Mm.
all pointed to community. And so it was like this beautiful merging of, oh, what I need is what the earth needs. And I can actually just like make this my lifestyle to kind of address all of my values and what I care about.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, this might sound silly, but one of the things that I think of when I hear the word village is in the original Disney version of Beauty and the Beast, I think of Belle like walking through the village and, everybody popping out and the baker with his bread and the librarian, and how
Yeah.
I think that was always my favorite part actually. And I think there's something about like they knew each other, she went into the library and they had a relationship. Like it wasn't some, just random, like, oh, I got another librarian. No, it was like they knew each other and he knew which books she loved and he gave her the book because she loved it so much. And I think there's something about like um being known in the context of just like her little village, but I love how you're describing it too. And it actually reminds me, there's a story that you mentioned about muffins. Would you mind
Oh,
sharing
yeah.
your muffin story? I was really struck by that.
Well, first of all, I've never been reminded of that scene from Beauty and the Beast before in this way. And I'm like, that is my favorite. part too. So I feel kinship with you. And it's so interesting. I'm like, huh, I wonder if that planted a seed in my psyche at some point around like what community could be.
Mhm.
But yeah, so the muffin story, it's funny you mentioned the Beauty and the Beast thing because I had that experience 2 weeks ago. I was at we have like a community garden down the street. I was there kind of chatting with some people I knew, picking up vegetables, and someone goes, "Are you the muffin family?" And it was this moment of being like really seen and known that I've been working in a sense to create that. I've been weaving that. Um, I've been wanting that. And yeah, so what she was referencing is she met a man who told the story from his lens. He's the guy that we bought our house from. And like I guess summarization of this is I just posted this on Substack is we have been looking for a home for 7 years,
Mhm.
like going all the transactional ways, real estate agents, Zillow, like looking around and just feeling really discouraged and heartbroken and like a number of instances like this, we may not be homeowners anytime soon. And then I approached it through a revillaging way, and part of that is
Mm.
prayer. And in February with my daughter, I just took some rose petals that we had that were going to go to waste. And I was like, let's give an offering to this tree. And I just like really called in the sense of like the type of home we wanted to land in. I wanted
Mm.
it to be in this neighborhood where I've already been rooting and relationship building. I just like felt it. And then I did nothing, because to weave in like the cycles, that was just the moment of planting the seed and then letting it grow.
I
And
love that.
then I would say, like within the month, I got the idea that I could bake some muffins and write a personal note and hand it off to a couple houses nearby. Maybe they would want to sell their house someday, just like plant the seed there. And I got a text message right away from a man that said, I'm going to be an empty nester. I think that this should go to a young family. Come over. I'd love to show you the home. Well, it turns out his wife passed away 10 years ago. And for him, it was deeply meaningful because he felt like his late wife was like nudging him to leave the home. And so it
Wow.
was like this really relational experience. I mean, he feels like an uncle to us. Like we are in relationship.
Yeah.
My husband brought him to the hospital when he had like an appointment. So like there's all of those acts of care that surrounded what would have been a transactional
Mm.
experience. And we bought the home from him directly. We own it now, and now we're just in the process of moving. But
I love
yeah,
that.
I mean, there's so many pieces to that, but I'll just sum it up to say that was like revillaging kind of in a
Yeah.
nutshell.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so beautiful, Emily. And I mean, it took like just to kind of like get really nuanced in that, like it took your deliberate choice to say like, okay, wait, I have
Mhm.
all these, resources flooding my awareness of, all the things on the
Mhm.
internet that say, here's how to find your home, right? There's commercials all the time for that.
Yeah.
And instead you were like, well, actually, I believe in this paradigm and I want to show
Mhm.
up according to that. And so you did. And then you paused, which I think
Mhm.
is another really important piece to that because
Mhm.
I have a resource called the Sacred Pause Ritual. And
Mhm.
the reason I created that is because I just think that's such an important piece that's missing because we we want to create intentions that are resonant, but there's so many suggestions around us that, when we find one that we're like, ooh, that seems good, right? Like we can grab it. But if we don't pause, if we don't actually take the time to be present with what we've planted or what's growing already, right? Like it doesn't stick. And so I love that pause was your second part of that, like just trusting what you'd just done in prayer and then
Mhm.
following the nudge like oh
Mhm.
there's inspiration I'm gonna honor it and so I just yeah
Mhm.
thank you for breaking that down. I just think it's really beautiful to hear all those pieces.
Oh, thank you for, yeah, naming the pause being so important because that's something that's taken time for me. I'm learning that I'm a generator in human design and that there's like a very go, go, go nature to me.
Yeah.
But the pause being important and
Yeah.
yeah, and the trust in that.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah, so I want to come to your core message because you talked about in our emails, you said your core message is really that we were meant to live, age, and raise children as part of a village. And that shifts more with who we're being than what we're doing. Could you help us understand what that paradigm shift looks like, especially for women who have been conditioned to prove their worth by doing everything themselves?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I can share personally how it comes up for me. I mean, I think so the doing versus being thing is like I have, right, been conditioned to believe we have and collectively that like our worth is around productivity, what we produce, and also like if we want to get things in life, we have to do things to receive to be worthy of them or to
Yeah.
earn them, you know? And so there's a lot of deep conditioning in there. And now if I speak to my audience, my niche with there's like many layers of my audience, right? Because a village is for everyone, but I am kind of niched in speaking to parents because I feel like that's when we really have this moment of like, oh, I really do need this. And also the realization that our kids need this and we want to give them this as
Yeah.
part of their experience. So for that experience as a parent with young children, we are like so tapped out and
Mm.
constantly, you know, being pulled into doing. And the being is really a practice. And so I wanted to make it clear that like, if you want the village, if you want community, you actually don't have to do a bunch of things. Like it's not about more action steps and to-do lists. It's more about honestly shifting to the state of being a villager. Like, what does
Mm.
it mean to be a villager? And now your answer to that, Emily, will be different than mine or
Yeah.
anyone listening. And there's something magical about starting to like play with that and see, ooh, who am I in this moment in the grocery store as a villager?
I love
You
that.
know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm thinking back to that Beauty and the Beast scene too. I'm like, oh, who would I be in the context of that, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like, yeah, what's coming up in me right now is like, I do art. And so like
Mm,
maybe like I would be someone who has a little art shop, right? And like
mm,
maybe creating scenes, like, I don't know, just like the gift of like, ooh,
mm.
I can gift my artwork to, I don't know, like there's automatically as you're asking that question, this like generative inspiration coming up in me, even around like what you talked about earlier, like the relational piece, like, oh, here's what I could offer the village. And also like, since I'm naming my role, I also know that, well, I wouldn't be a baker, right? And so like
Right.
things I could receive are kind of like named automatically when I start to imagine that too.
I saw you light up. I mean, that's how I feel too. It's like, and that's also what it feels like to be nourished. Like revillaging can nourish us because all of a sudden you're nourished by, oh my gosh, possibility, creativity. And I want to just and hear your thoughts on this too. But one thing I'm trying to actually break down for myself and other folks is like, it's not so much about now assuming another like occupation. Right. So when you said I could be an artist, like, so that is one component of who you
Yeah,
are. Right. And there was something about that that excited you. And you even refer to it as like, there's almost like a gift exchange or an economy that
yeah,
forms through like, I'm going to give my art and it
yeah.
just, yeah. So that's exactly the essence of what I want to offer. And then what I'm not looking to recreate is like this boring, monotonous conversation of what do you do? Like, what do you do
Mm.
for work? That
Mhm.
limits us and boxes us into kind of like one version of who we are.
Yes, that's so good, right? And isn't it
Yeah.
funny? Like, there's so much. I mean, I'm sure if we traced it back, it's clear how that became the key question that we ask, right?
Mhm.
Because we do define so much of our identity by the doing. But yeah, if you were gonna say what new question you want to replace that with, what would the new question be?
Mm. Yeah, like what lights you, so the questions are like what lights you up? What
Mhm.
are you excited to try? Like what do you want to learn and play with? I'm very big on play and experimentation as ways of,
Yeah.
you know, doing this. So I'll give an example. Like I have had kind of this personal desire, it's a desire and longing to like make things with my hands, to kind of
Mm.
replace the prepackaged stuff with things that I've sourced and like made with my kids. And so that has been my vehicle in a sense for connecting with neighbors. Like all I wanted to learn
Mm.
to make sourdough. I made sourdough and then I gifted it to a neighbor. I learned to make chocolate. So it's like that was kind of how I answer the question of like, what do I want to learn or try? But then there's
Mm.
also the way in of like, what are your existing gifts? Like, what are you passionate about and you want to share with the world? What do you want to teach others? And that's kind of how I would explore it.
That's so beautiful. I think I'm curious, like one question that I can kind of hear rising
Hmm.
up is like, I don't want to say pessimistic, but I think there's like a conditioning around like that busyness that you've talked about. And again, it's a paradigm shift. So I kind of view paradigms as like a set of glasses that you see the world through. And so if we're taking off this busyness doing over productivity paradigm and we're putting on this
Mm.
village paradigm, um, I'm curious, like for the woman who says that's nice, but it sounds like a luxury, or like that's
Mm.
nice, but like how do I make that leap? You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
uh, uh, as she's in the midst of her present paradigm, what are some practical steps, right?
Sure. Yeah. So what I hear in that in response to that is like, let's meet each of us where we are.
Mm.
And, I was talking to my sister about this recently. Like she had an experience where she just said hello to her barista. So she's about her routine, doing her busy thing, going
Yeah.
to work here or there, right? She stops and gets coffee. And then the shift she made was, I'm actually going to say, pause again, say hi, make eye contact with my barista, maybe ask their name. That like does nothing. It's not like additional work. It's just a
Right.
shift in who she's being. Like she's being open, she's being a villager. And she said, I said, how did that feel though? And she said, I suddenly like felt better. Like I
Mm.
didn't even realize I wasn't feeling good before. And then I just felt better.
Yeah.
Um, and so my offering there is like to begin with this practice of connecting with the world around you. It could be also like plants are a
Yeah.
part of our village, right? Other children, like, but I think we've kind of lost or even grown like fearful of just making eye
Mm.
contact. And so
Yeah.
that's something that's super easy that can shift who you are
Yes.
being. Yeah.
Oh, Emily, I love how you just are really real, you know? Like I just
Yeah.
really I appreciate that this is like a lived experience for you. It's not a theory, you know, and it shows in the way you're living it and communicating about it. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there's so many things we could talk about right now. I want to hear about your third space though. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I definitely want to talk about third space, and I don't know if you have a note about moon school because I know we're talking about cycles. So we'll start with that third space. So yeah, so the third space has been an idea for many years for me. I wanted like a practice space to come together with other people who share a desire to like create a new paradigm. But for a while it was under kind of the guise of my podcast. I was like, I want to like practice what these guests are talking about. And then as I kind of really committed to this revillaging path for myself and as a line of work and offering, I was like, we're building community, we're feeling nurtured by our relationships in our real life. And yet there's still almost like a need for an added layer of like coming together with other revillagers. So people who
Mm,
are doing similar things in their own zip codes and to come together through ritual, like through prayer, and also to practice things together so that we have shared accountability in that,
mm,
but also like learn from each other's mistakes and wins. Um,
right.
and so like for example, one person may have like they're creating an art installation in their front yard that neighbors can engage with. And I'm like, oh my God, I never would have thought of that. I wanted to create an herbal apothecary in my front yard. Like, and now it's inspiring and also I think reinforcing possibility. Like this is actually alive and here right now. We don't have to feel like it doesn't exist.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah, tell me about the moon school too. I wanna
Yeah.
definitely. I love the experimenting that you're doing with that.
Yeah, and I would say all like third space is also an experiment. And so I just want to underline like for the people I work with and anyone listening to this, like an experimental mindset is also like a really helpful paradigm shift to just be like, okay, everything doesn't have to be perfect. I could try putting together a block party, and if only two people show up, that wasn't a failure. Like
Yeah.
that was like what did I learn in that process? What did I enjoy? What did I not enjoy?
Yeah,
Um,
in our
yeah.
coaching alliance, the way I describe it is the laboratory agreement, and
Mhm.
it's this idea that like when a scientist does an experiment, they come in with a hypothesis, right? This is what I think is going
Yeah.
to happen, and they do the experiment, and if their hypothesis doesn't happen, that doesn't mean the experiment's a failure if they learn, right? And like I love
Hmm.
that. I love that because I think it changes our mindset to say success isn't being right.
Right.
Success is if I learn, right? And yeah, I love that. And if
And
I
not to,
play.
yeah, and not to mention what you're sharing with others, like in that block party example, if only two people come, I still planted a seed for something. I still
Yeah,
like put it out there that like I'm available and open to connect.
yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, so tell me
so
I
so
intruded with
moons.
that.
No, no, I love this so much. Yeah, so the moon school is an experiment also, and that was birthed at the start of this year. I was actually like drawing phases of the moon with my 3-year-old, or she was 2 at the time. We were drawing phases of the moon. And I also was like holding like this question of like what do we want to teach our kids this year? Like what are we really teaching them? And the phases of the moon, the cycle of the moon felt like really important
Mm.
as a framing of time that I wanted my kids to like understand from the beginning and never have to like forget and remember.
Yes.
Um, and I know my husband is like very intrigued by that as well. And it's something that I need accountability with. So like
Mm.
I sometimes forget like where we are in the moon cycle. And I want to live by that. So then I was like, okay, how could this become a community experience? Like how can, and that's revillaging as well, right? It's like how can community and
Mm.
grouping groups of other people help your own dreams come into fruition, hold you accountable and like create it together.
Yeah.
So I just thought I'm sure there's other parents who'd be interested in getting together around the moon. You know, I've only experienced women's circles around the moon. My husband was like, I think the dads would like to be there. So it started to form into this idea that I then shared out locally on a Facebook group. I put some flyers up in coffee shops and I invited directly friends. And I think we had like 30 families sign up initially,
Wow.
but not everyone comes each time. So that's also cyclical, right? Like
Mm.
so we meet on the new moon and the full moon, and then depending on who's around, different families come together. And the format is really simple. It's just a circle. It evolved into something super simple. It's just a circle where basically the parents check in with each other on like where they are at and at this phase of the moon cycle, like what's
Mm.
happening for them, and it becomes like a support group.
Yeah.
And then the kids are playing. But really, what happens from a revillaging lens is as we get together pretty frequently, because the moon is like every 2 weeks we're getting
Right.
together, right? And for the new and the full moon, we now are like parenting together. So our children are not like siloed. Like we're all
Mhm.
jumping in as like one collective parent body.
Yeah.
Yesterday we had our gathering and there was like 12 kids like running around naked, like, and all of us were just like, well, like there was just this like really wild and free experience of like,
Mm.
yeah, there's safety here, there's trust here. We all like understand each other. And that got built through this consistency in showing up. And the moon is our teacher, honestly,
Ugh.
in doing that.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And I love the simplicity of it too, right? Like it doesn't have to be like, okay, I'm getting
Yeah.
ready to do this big thing, like what do I have packed? Like no, it's just being present in a different way with one another.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
It did start more complex. I was like, we're gonna do crafts and like nature activities. And actually, you know, one of my gifts, I think, to community is like asking questions and bringing in the shared response. So I kept asking the group, like, what do we want? And the answer was like just simple. Like, I don't want to prepare. I just want to show up. And then the other thing I had to work through myself, and I think this is part of revillaging, is like working through our own relational stories. Like I
Mm,
felt like, oh, I'm too much if I ask this question. Like no one wants to connect in this serious way. But like every time someone cries from like a deep emotional release and like I love seeing the men be more vulnerable. And I've asked, like, I'm like, do we like this format? And everyone is so grateful for that, like, formality, even though, yeah, like we get together all the time in other ways. Like, this forces us to be honest about how we're actually doing.
yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with me and our listeners. I think eh, even in your voice and the way you're sharing, I can hear the sacredness of those moments. And yeah, just I in other seasons of my life, I've been a part of communities that gathered regularly with their kids, and I know the feeling of uh group parenting, right? And
Yeah.
like the gift of knowing that, yeah, like your neighbor's kids are like what they're into and what they're up to and what their gifts are and what lights them up and what they're afraid of. And like
Mm.
the intimacy of that is just so beautiful. Yeah, thank
Mhm.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think yeah, as we're coming kind of closer to the close of our time, um, I'd love to hear how our listeners can connect with you and learn more about the third space and the revillaging work you're up to.
Yeah, so I guess the lightest touch is to follow along, whether you like to read long form content. I have a Substack, Emily Cares.
Mm,
And then I have an Instagram, Revillaging Mama. So this will all be linked, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm playing with those mediums to kind of start shifting like our mindset around these things and also
mm,
sharing my own stories. And then I have my one-on-one offering. It can also be two, it could be like partners, like couples and me, but that's like a dedicated container for those who are like, okay, revillaging speaks to me, or I'm really ready to get out of the survival paradigm and the individual paradigm into something else. But because this is a transformational experience, like that's for those who are like, I like to be supported in that. I like to
mm.
have like a consistent time that I show up to reflect and also even get not necessarily challenged, but nudged. Like, I'm hearing you say you want to do this. Like, what would it
Yeah.
look like to do this in a way that feels good?
Yeah.
And like make it enjoyable. So that's that container is I call it Revillage Your Life. And
Mm,
um that's a very sacred, journey. And then the third space is for those who maybe they're also working with me one on one, but they want that communal experience of learning from others and shared wisdom and
hmm.
shared practice. And so that's another opportunity you could join there. And there's also a living library we create together. So like things are being added all the time around even like homeschooling resources and birth resources, but then they're all kind of under that guise of like the village being the mindset.
Oh, I love that so much. I think I want to ask one more question too.
Yeah, yeah.
What's your vision for how revillaging might evolve? Like, what are you most
Mm.
excited about as more people awaken to this way of living?
Oh, I feel the ease. I
Mm,
feel like the weight continuing to lift because with each person that gets touched by this and shifts themselves, like there's an internal weight that gets lifted, but we really start to shift into like holding it all together.
mm,
Um, and oh my gosh, I mean, I just see things evolving hopefully to like more place-based, like local. I really feel like with social media, for example, like we have the luxury of being able to connect in the third space does this too. Like we're connecting across geographic regions. And I think there's a need for that. But what happens when that isn't balanced is like we forget the importance of connecting with
mm.
people on our street who may have political difference from us or like not raise their kids the same way. And so I'm hoping with this revillaging movement that we'll start to like find safety and difference again and feel like we can move through even like challenge together because we're
Mhm.
committed to like the fact that we live together here.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I have a community that I had created through my business as well. And it's a threshold community for women when they're in their in between places. And I just launched it in June, but one of the biggest questions I got, because it's not just for one specific threshold, it's not
Hmm.
just for women who are becoming mothers for the first time or retiring or moving. It's for anyone who feels in that in between space where they need to
Mm.
release the previous chapter and welcome the next one. One of the biggest questions I got was, how can I receive wisdom from people who are going through different things than me, right? Because I think we're used to gathering around our sameness in a lot of ways.
Right.
And I love what you're saying. And I want to like draw emphasis on that um, because it's actually a liability, right? Like I
Yeah.
actually think that even though there's great value in finding connection around our sameness, there's great loss when we miss out on the wisdom that can come through our differentness and the
Mm,
perspectives that we wouldn't have accessed.
mhm,
There's there's perspectives, there's friction that can
mhm,
serve us, I think, because
mhm,
it challenges us to find what's actually true instead of just kind
mhm,
of sitting in um sort of like squishy truth that's not really refined or clear or even like kind a lot of the time.
mm,
Um
mm,
there's just like there's so much that a community of people who come from different perspectives and backgrounds and cultures can offer us. And I love that
mm.
that's a it sounds like a cornerstone to the way that you invite people to see the village that already exists around them. Like don't just look for the people who are the
Mhm.
same, right? Look for open your eyes a little bit wider and be curious about maybe the ones that you wouldn't have assumed are your village.
Yeah, can I just say one thing on that? And I know we're wrapping up, but yeah, the for me, my own revillaging like this chapter, my own revillaging path right now is really calling in parents who are at a different stage of parenting. So I don't want to only connect with parents who have toddlers. I'm like, I want to see someone who has a teenager. Like I want to hear your wisdom. And also in calling in more elders and like an older generation that I previously would have pushed away because I would have been like, I don't want to hear what you have to say. Like there's like this inner teenager that I'm really having a relationship with right now where I'm like, okay, wow, Emily, like you don't want to be told what to do. You don't want to be given advice. And yet like this is a gift from someone from a
Yes.
different time who like they want to be able to share that gift and just have it be received. You don't actually have to do what they're saying, but can you just
Mm.
try it on or like just sit with that
Yeah,
as a gift?
I love
So
that.
yeah, I am getting so much from that. I really would offer that to anyone who feels like they need to do
Yes.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, even what you shared earlier about this man who now feels like an uncle to you, right? Like
Yeah.
it sounds like there's a generational difference there too. And
Yeah.
just your family now, like your kids, right? Now have
Yeah.
this opportunity to receive other life experience because you were open to that. That's just beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah, you get it.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for bringing this essential vision to our Moon and Fire community today. I want to just especially acknowledge with gratitude your reminder that we were meant for village life and that this is
Mm,
something that we can call back into being through who we're being rather than what
mm,
we're doing. That feels like
mm,
really key medicine to me.
mm,
I'm just really
yeah.
grateful for your work. Thank you so much.
Yeah, likewise, I'm so grateful to be invited on here and for all that you're also modeling and the wisdom that you're bringing us back to as women. It's so important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Remember the sacred cycles, reclaim your radiant fire, unleash your intuitive magic. Thank you so much for being here, Sacred Woman. Until next time.